Hello, everybody. Welcome to another session here at the Kickpod, the Kickpod Dojo. And I'm your host, your sensei, TJ Williams, giving you the insight of my martial arts journey, discussing and analyzing martial arts-based subjects, and highlighting individuals involved in martial arts, past, present, and future. All right, so I got a guest this week coming from Seattle, Washington. Of course, she's the owner and chief instructor of the Seattle Wushu Center. And of course, she's got two shows. And you got the Java Buzz. Of course, she's co-host with one of my previous guests, Andrea Hawkins, and also Jane Larkins Miser, who I hope I'll get on show soon. So I'll have all three of you, and that'll be the Java collection, Java Buzz collection. And of course, also she hosts another show, the Dynamic Dojo Talk TV with Kathy Long, which I'll also have on the show. So surprisingly, I'm gonna definitely have a good year. I'm getting a lot of famous people. All right, so let me introduce you to Restita DeJesus, or should I say Sifu Restita DeJesus?
Restita will be fine.
Yeah, I have to have that respect bond. I mean, I've been in karate long enough. I refer people to as Mr. or Mrs. or even Master. Yeah. Right. How we doing?
Thank you. Really good. Thanks for having me on your podcast today.
Yeah. I know you are very successful with your podcasts or with your shows too. Yeah. I try to catch it every Friday morning. If I don't have nothing to do at work, I kind of look at YouTube and try to see if you are on.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. On Fridays, the Java Buzz podcast with Jane Larkin Miser and Andrea Harkins is, I guess, the dose of motivation for the rest of the week for not only martial artists, friends and colleagues, but for anyone that is willing to take a listen and just spend an hour just chatting with us. The Dynamic Dojo Talk TV show is, I guess, more of a multifaceted, like almost like an entertainment variety show with guests, that kind of thing. So two different themes, but really fun, regardless.
Yeah. One of the guests at my interview was like, she kind of calls it geeking out. Like you're just discussing anything and just having a good time with it.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly it. On both of the shows, on the Java Buzz, that's my dog, Hunter. On both of our shows, wherever the subject goes or wherever the energy goes, then the discussion goes. The Java Buzz, however, isn't specifically martial art oriented, whereas the Dynamic Dojo Talk TV show is specifically martial art oriented. But either way, both shows are really fun. And and we always like to send a shout out to other colleagues that have podcasts such as yours. So on the Java Buzz show the other day, we sent a shout out to you for your particular podcast, and all three of us want to thank you for your efforts in your podcast to get the word out about other martial artists and schools and the martial arts industry. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm going 2 years, probably in April. I'll be 2 years for the Kickpod.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what the pandemic could do to you. I mean, really, you have nothing to do, and then you create this. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So you're going to get in a time machine. I'm going to pretty much DeLorean style.
Okay.
So we're going to go back in time with your career. And like pretty much you're giving the direction. I'm just driving. So I'm going to ask a series of questions. And of course, you answer them in the best of your ability. All right. You ready to go?
Yep.
All right.
Here we go.
All right. 1.21 gigawatts in electricity in the flux capacitor. We're off to go.
Here we go.
Yeah. Yeah. I got in that DeLorean one time and I almost fell in.
I got into one once at a car show.
Yeah.
And I got in, but then it was like, now how do I get out? Because just the way, and my height, and I was, how do I get out? How do I close the door?
Yeah. Good thing I haven't drove one yet. I think it's a stick.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Oops.
Uh, okay, here we go. The first
All right.
question. Describe yourself before you got into martial arts. So basically, who were you before you started?
I was a 7-year-old kid that was really, oops, sorry, that's my dog. I was a 7-year-old kid that was really obsessed with the old Kung Fu TV series.
Oh,
So when the Kung Fu TV series came out in 1971, I was only, what was I, 6? Oh, I got to do the math now. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 7, 8. Yeah, I was actually going on 6. And when the first episode of Kung Fu, the TV series, came out, I, even as like a 6-year-old, I thought that it was really interesting, the philosophy behind it. And I was just enthralled by it. And this was philosophy that most, 8-year-olds wouldn't be able to understand, but I
yeah.
was enthralled by it. Um, and then a couple of years later, I was really called to do martial arts, but there was no kung fu in Seattle.
Yeah.
So my parents got my sister and I introduced to a karate class in our neighborhood. So that's uh that's how I got started. But yeah, I was just a regular old kid enthralled with the kung fu TV series, trying to figure out how to make swords out of, toilet paper tubes or paper towel tubes and stuff like that, trying to be like Kwai Chang Caine. Um, and kind of, just living in that world of fantasy until I really realized that martial arts was real.
Yeah.
So, but I was really shy. I was a shy girl. So that's who I was, a shy girl in the kung fu fantasy land.
Yeah. It's pretty much how you start off. I mean, you're kind of that shy kid. You don't want to go out, but definitely martial arts kind of brings you out of that shell.
Mhm.
So yeah, Kung Fu. Yeah, I remember the show. I mean, I remember the Journey Begins or Journey Continues. I think that was like after
That was
the
like in the yeah, that was in the 80s, I
or the
think.
90s. Yeah,
Something like that. Yeah.
yeah. I
There was at
remember.
least a 20-year, I think there was like a 20-year gap before David Carradine came back to the fold with The Legend Continues, and
That's
then
it.
there
That
was
was it.
another follow-up to that. So
Yeah, yeah. I think that was like in the 90s. I remember the channel TNT. Yeah,
yeah, TNT.
yeah. Yeah, there was some good movies or good shows that came out of that channel. It's like nowadays it's just like you don't want to watch
Well,
TV.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's funny how, like, back then, like TNT and the cable movie channels like HBO and Showtime
yeah,
had great content, and other things like MTV. But now, like,
mm,
MTV is a bunch of reality shows. It's almost like, where is the music
yeah,
videos anymore, right? So, and back then, I think Kung Fu was on channel 13, I think, here in what we would in our
yeah,
networks. It was on channel 13, which was a regular um network channel, as opposed to cable, because we didn't have cable back then,
yeah,
right? But yeah, it was pretty interesting. And then when they brought out the next generation or whatever it was called, yeah, it was TNT.
yeah. And I'm just going back to the 90s. That was like the best years of my childhood. Just those TV shows.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Those were great TV shows.
Uh, so basically watching Kung Fu was your push into getting the martial arts. And then of course, can you remember your first lesson? Like your
Yes,
first
I do.
class? Yeah.
Yes, I do. um we walked in, and of course my sister and I were a little nervous, so my mom just kind of hung out until the instructor came. So in comes this tall guy. He's like 6'2" or whatever to us, so he's like tall. And literally we thought, oh my gosh, he looks like Jesus. because he did. He had long hair and this beard, and he looked exactly like some of the portraits of Jesus that were in our house, right? So it was kind of this close to creepy, but it was actually kind of cool too. Because my teacher at the time, Sensei Peter Gurney, he was 21, 22, 23, I think, early 20s, kind of like how should we say, what most people would probably consider to kind of be like hippie type of thing.
Yep.
But he came in, and we saw this guy that looked like Jesus, that kind of looked like a hippie. And then he's like, are you here for the karate class? And so my sister and I and several other kids and several other adults were like, yeah, okay, I'll be back. I'm going to change. And then a few minutes later, he came out in this pristine white karate gi and his black belt. And, when you see stuff like that, on TV, and then you see it for real, it really makes an impact on you as a kid.
Yeah.
And now Sensei Gurney, he made this class possible by a grant through the city of Seattle. So he had planned out, okay, I'm going to get this many karate gis with this grant. I'm going to, do this and that. So he gave everyone their first karate gi that day, that first day, white belt. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a Tokaido gi, a lightweight Tokaido gi, which, I mean, how cool is that, considering that Tokaido gis now, even the student weight, are like what, $80?
Yeah.
For that brand name Tokaido. So we changed. He taught us how to tie our belts. And that took about 20 minutes of the class, giving us kind of like a history lesson. And then it was another, 45 minutes of warming up, learning the basic kihon, learning how to punch and upward block, inward block, basic kicks, basic stances. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this is, well, I didn't say this in my head, but this is badass, because I was like going on 8, right? So I thought this was the coolest thing. And even though we just learned, basic block, basic kick, basic kibadachi, and basic this and that, it was that day was the turning point of that day. Started an obsession that continues through this day. And I remember everything from the gi to, what the floor in that recreation center room felt like, what it smelled like in there. It was a wonderful experience. And when I got home that evening, I literally practiced tying my obi over and over and over again, so I wouldn't be that person that was struggling with it the next class. So my sister and I just practiced tying our obi all night. Literally, we had these contests on, okay, can you tie with your eyes closed now? Okay. Oh, but now your ends have to be even. And so yeah, it was really cool. And we were very from that day forward, we were very how should we say, anal retentive, so to speak, about keeping those gis that we received from our sensei pristine, clean, ironed, starched, the whole 9 yards. So anyway, yes, I that was a wonderful memory that first day. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, you take the time to at least know how to put your belt on and everything, so you have it fresh in your mind. And of course, you was working on techniques. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of my first day. Of course, I didn't get my gi until like, I think the 3rd or 4th class. I mean, probably the 3rd class, because I had to like buy my gi. I pretty much had like sweatpants and a shirt. That's how pretty much I started. And it was like during winter, because I'm definitely going on 25 years now. So
nice. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nowadays, many dojos will start with, the introductory lessons, like my dojo does. We have a series of introductory lessons, so that way the students can, I guess, try out the classes and make a decision to see if the class resonates with them before joining. And then if they decide to join, okay, that's when they get their gi. Um, but usually I get a inkling of how they would be as students by the second lesson. So if I feel that they would be a good match for the studio, then I go ahead and order their gi. So that way, at the end of their third lesson, they can
Yeah.
actually, get their gi. But yeah, it's with a lot of kids these days, though. I don't know if you've noticed, but um, with a lot of kids these days, at least for me, when I teach them how to tie their obi the next day, and this is older kids, the next class, they're struggling with it. Or, for older kids, the parents are helping them with it.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I was like 7 going on 8 years old. Um, and it didn't seem all that hard to tie the obi, at least for the other kids that we were with. So I was wondering, nowadays, what is it about the tying the obi that is difficult, or what is it about the way I'm describing
Yeah.
how to tie the obi that is difficult? So anyway, just a little thought on on my end there.
Yeah, just think about it. There's always a different type of way of tying the belt. So I know
Mm-hmm.
there's two ways I tie the belt.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the first way is like when I first learned how to tie a belt, and then of
Mm-hmm.
course second way I saw another martial artist tying their belt, and it's like that kind of felt a little lot better because when you
Mm-hmm.
tie the belt, you got a little tie behind you. But when you
Yeah.
actually tie the other way, it's like it's just nice and clean. It's just straight, and then there's no
Yeah.
ties behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, when I initially learned how to tie my belt, I learned the traditional way where the ends of the OB face up and then they drape down, right?
Mhm.
The traditional way they would tie kaku obi in Japan. And then but my sensei tied his belt kind of upside down. So rather than wrapping it around and placing the end up and under, he placed his end down and
Mm.
then tied it that way, so that way the ends just hung down. um I mean, for me, that's how I tie my obi, um most times. But I do find that I have to tighten it more often than if
Yeah.
I did it the other way. um and that's cool. And some of my students, they use the, what do they call it, the Loctite knot that
Yeah.
jujitsu, you've seen it, right? The Loctite knot, which a lot of jujitsu players wear their
Yeah.
belt, where it goes, where the knot and the ends go through the layers,
Yeah.
the two layers. Yeah. And I tried that once, and yeah, I like how the knot never comes undone, but I can't seem to bend over because because the knot ends up being, because it's locked up against your body, the
Yeah.
knot ends up being this big as opposed to that big. So anyway, to each their own, I guess.
Yeah. All right. So of course you got your favorite moments. What would be your favorite moment? Like, were you like testing for a black belt or testing in general?
One of my, well, I have a lot of favorite moments, but I guess my my favorite moment was when I was a brown belt, and I had gone to my first tournament as a brown belt. I had not competed until I was a brown belt in Butokukan karate. And then I decided to go to our styles open tournament, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do my favorite kata and see how I do. Now, of course, at this tournament, there have been like orange belts, purple belts, green belts, and stuff like that that have competed before, and here's this brown belt that's never competed before. I was nervous as all get out.
Yeah.
But I got out there, and I only won third place that day.
Oh,
But I figured for my first tournament, that wasn't so bad. Um, and that's my favorite. That's my favorite experience because number one, it was my first time competing. Number two, I didn't do too bad. You know, a lot of people at their first tournaments don't place within the top three. And number three, it really kind of whet my appetite and interest for the competition circuit, because I saw it as a challenge. I saw it as a challenge in that there are other kids
Yep.
and teens that want that same first place trophy,
yeah.
that everyone else wants. And at that point, it's a matter of who trained harder, who is on it today and didn't have a bad day, and who wants it more.
Yeah.
And that was the challenge, being able to have the opportunity to compete against other kids and teens that work just as hard and want that trophy just as much.
Yep.
So yeah, and then from that point on, yeah, I was kind of hooked on tournaments for for a while. So
Yeah.
that's my favorite moment.
Yeah, this is usually I can relate. Like usually with my students, I kind of tell them, like teach them if they're going to compete. It's almost like you're telling a story to the judges. I mean, how are you going
Yes.
to tell a story of how you're going to perform that kata in front of the judges?
Mhm.
So I kind of have them, like before they do the kata, have to do their presentation. So
Yeah,
presentation is always important as you're
it
going up there
is.
doing kata. It's like you want to be,
Exactly.
yeah, you want to be loud. You want to have that loud volume. I always tell
Mhm.
those students, like I used to do this sound, like turn on the volume. It's volume up. Yeah, because they're so soft spoken.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah. I
that
haven't done
was it.
tournament fighting. I haven't done tournament fighting for a while. I mean, of course, I competed in our convention back in
Mhm.
this year. Of course, I did the tafas and did traditional kata. My
Mhm.
one thing third place in both of them. Yeah, so I mean, I don't feel too bad about getting third place. I'm not all about winning. It's just get myself out there and compete.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
experience. The experience is incredible. Back in 2017, I came out of retirement to compete again. And at that point in time, it had been close to 15 years since I last actually competed in any local tournament, national tournament, world tournament. Um, in 2017, I registered for the Gathering of Champions tournament in Torrance, California,
Mhm.
and I thought, why not? We'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
years have changed a little bit. My body had changed, so instead of competing in, you know, kung fu or wushu with all the jumping and stuff, my knees can't handle that anymore. I competed in Tai Chi, and I
Oh,
thought, you know what? This is going to be a challenge because I am competing against all these people doing fast, dynamic, flashy forms. Let's see if this old lady can pull it off doing a Tai Chi form against all of these fast, incredibly skilled people. And we're all the same age and we all know each other, right? And we're all joking around going, man, I wish I could move that fast and blah, blah, blah. And I said, watch this. And then I walked slowly out to the thing. They're like, are you serious, Tai Chi? I'm like, watch this. And it was great because it was just a bunch of friends that hadn't seen each other, in the national tournament circuit for at least I haven't seen them in 15 years because I wasn't competing. And it turned out great. I won first place in that division. And my friends were like, holy moly, you're moving slow, and won a gold medal. But I guess, it just, for anyone to come back into competing like it wasn't about the trophy for me. I just wanted to see if I still could do it. And to see what kind of things I could still do because my knees are shot, my ankles are shot. I can't do wushu anymore. I can't do a lot of those acrobatics. So, you know, what could I do? What can I train for? Let's have some fun. Let's see our friends, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not it after a while it's not about the trophies. It's about just getting the practice in and challenging yourself again. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I like about those tournaments. I mean, other than competing, you get to meet other people from other styles. So I've done like a lot of tournaments, and of course, our organization that hosts our convention. Yeah, I get to see a
Mhm.
lot of black belts from around the world that train in the style that I'm in. So I like always like going back to the convention. I mean, even if I can, well, I try to afford it because it's expensive to go,
Right.
but definitely I take the time to try to spend or at least save my money, and so I can go to these conventions almost every year. I mean, of
Mhm.
course, for like next year, I'll be going for master rank, so I'm looking forward to that. So
Cool.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it's a good thing I'll have to test physically for that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm pretty much retired now. All right, let's go to your your wushu career. I know you
Mhm.
said you have a school now,
Mhm.
and so how you got that started?
Well, my school actually had several incarnations. I taught for the Seattle Parks and Recreation Department ever since 1982, teaching karate. And not long after that, I started studying kajukenbo. And as I was studying, I decided to open a commercial karate dojo in 1990 instead of going through the Parks and Recreation.
Mhm.
So at that time, that was the first incarnation of my dojo. It was called Inner Concepts Martial Arts at that time. After I got my teaching certificate in Kajukenbo, um, another Kajukenbo stylist, Cheryl Johnson, became my business partner. And with the approval of our Sifu Terry Faircloth, we opened, um, we took the the Inner Concepts Martial Arts and we actually moved to a bigger facility, changed the name completely to Seattle One Hop Kendo Academy. One Hop Kendo being a branch of the larger Kajukenbo system. And we taught the One Hop Kendo branch of Kajukenbo. We also taught Filipino martial arts and Tai Chi. And then since then, we went through several other incarnations. We changed the name to Yin Yang Art Center for a bit. It started out only being a name change on paper only for tax purposes
Yep.
and for business license purposes. But then we decided to change the whole business name and the logo as well. After about like almost uh, 10 years of that, um, our building, because we moved another time, um, that last time that we had the Yin Yang Arts Center uh, name, we had a beautiful 3,000 square foot facility.
Mhm.
However, the owner of the building decided to sell out to a developer, and we were forced to move because they were going to tear it down and
Oh,
put up another high-rise condo and business mixed use building. So we were forced to leave, and unfortunately at that time, um, I had gone sole proprietorship, and I had to move into an area of Seattle that just was not conducive um, to martial arts. The demographic in that particular area of Seattle was just not conducive, and it wasn't convenient for my old students to drive from where they were, from our old neighborhood, to all the way across town. It just wasn't convenient.
yep.
Um, we lost literally half our student population,
Oh,
and yeah, it was a humbling moment, and it was one of those situations where I had to really consider closing, because after losing half of our population student base, I couldn't pay the rent. So it was like, what do we do? So um, I decided to just keep looking back in our old neighborhood in West Seattle for a place. And I was like, oh my gosh, what do we, what do we do?
Yeah.
And well, when we moved, I decided to change the name of the school to Seattle Wushu Center. Number one, because during that time when we had Seattle One Hop Kendo Academy, I went through an intensive instructorship program with my Wushu and Tai Chi instructor, Master Yi Jiao Hong. And that instructorship program was about 3.5, almost 4 years, literally. And I kid you not, 6 days a week, 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. So it was
Oh,
well, she actually started us off at 7 days a week. And then about a year later, she decided, okay, you guys need a day off. And
yeah.
it was like, oh, thank God. But yeah, after about 3 something years of constant soreness and stuff like that, we were given our instructorship and coaching credentials to teach wushu. So we added wushu to our curriculum. So at that point in time, we were teaching Kajikembo, Filipino martial arts, Tai Chi,
Yep.
Wushu, as well as, having private lessons in knife throwing and bullwhip and blowgun and stuff like that. It was it started to become a multifaceted academy. So when I moved back to West Seattle, I said, you know what? I'm going to pay homage to all the martial arts and not just name my
Mhm.
school based on, Kajikembo, because we were just,
Yeah.
Seattle One Hop Kendo Academy. And we tried Yin Yang Arts Center. That didn't work out so well for, for about 10 years. So I said, okay, Seattle Wushu Center. Not only did Wushu refer to the modern Wushu that we were teaching, but the term Wushu, is a generic term for martial arts.
Yep.
So, Seattle Martial Arts, Center.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's kind of the long story on how,
Yeah.
how like, several art incarnations and 7 locations later, we are Seattle Wushu Center. And, yeah. And I'm actually still surprised, that we are still in operation, since 1990, because I was told that if a martial arts school survives the first 7 years, then you're good to go. So knock on wood.
Yeah. Yeah. So glad I've been to the karate studio for as long as I can. I mean, I've been there for like 25 years, and then of course we finally moved to a different location because the
Mhm.
building that we were in was like the roof started like collapsing, and then of course we tried to get that fixed, and then of course we had to go to the other location that yeah, he had two. My master instructor had 2 locations. So once
Mhm.
we closed one big location we had to have all our students go to that location. It was a small studio. I
Mhm.
mean, we try to fit all the classes in there and like try to keep all the students going. And of course,
Mhm.
the new school got opened, and yeah, it looks wonderful. It looks like half the school that we had before, but it's
Mhm.
wonderful. Just nice to have that new school, nice air conditioning, or should I say
Oh,
heat?
nice.
Yeah, it's like we didn't have no heat in the former locations. Like I was like freezing. I was like, I can't stand the
Yeah.
cold. I need heat. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
Yeah. I remember my first dojo when I was teaching karate. It was only 1,000 square feet,
Mm.
and it had just a relatively small Resnor brand heater, but there was no air conditioning. There was
Oh,
heat. So, our feet wouldn't freeze when it was on the bare floor. But when summer came, that particular, air building, which was just basically a medium sized house without any interior walls. Um, and the way it was facing, it was hot when, in the late afternoon and stuff. We had, it was like an oven,
Yeah.
and no amount of heat, not heat, no amount of fan helped, because it was just blowing hot air around. And we did try to get a portable air conditioning unit, but we would have needed like 2 or 3 of them. And at that
Yeah.
time, I couldn't afford it. I was a starving martial artist, back in 1990. And, but as my students that have been with me since then say, those were the days, you deal with
Yeah.
you sweat in the heat, swelter in the heat, sweat in the heat, and bundle up in the winter. And that's how you train.
Yeah. I think that's how I get my energy is when it's hot. When it's cold, that's like I don't have no energy. It's
It's
like,
hard. It's
yeah.
hard to want to kick, at a, reasonable, height when it's cold, and you don't want to run. You don't want to take your shoes off and put them on a floor. It's hard. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially if you leave your key in the car for a long time, then you have to put
Yeah,
it
and
on.
then you have to put it on and it's all cold.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I gotta have to get my stuff at home before I go to cry. And I don't leave my stuff in the car no more. It's
I
just
used to do that. And I hear you. Then you're putting on your gi pants and you're like, oh, it's cold.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you tell me the difference between wushu and kung fu? I want to make sure I understand like both of them, the styles. Like,
You kind of cut out for a second. Can you repeat the question?
okay, so is there like a difference between wushu and kung fu? I mean, they're basically similar, but there's got to be like a difference barrier to them.
Yeah. See, what we know as Kung Fu falls within the genre of Wushu. Wushu technically means martial or military way.
Okay.
So military art or martial play, military method, that kind of thing. So when you go to China and you say, oh, I do Wushu, what we would know here in the United States as the modern jumping, flipping kind of kung fu,
Yeah.
they would say, oh, what do you do? Do you do karate, judo, hungar? What do you do? Because when you say I do wushu, you're basically saying I'm a martial artist. I do martial arts. And then they'll ask you, well, what style do you do? Right. Um, unless you say I do modern wushu, then they'll go, oh, okay.
No.
That kind of wushu, right? So the thing is rather than with wushu has a specific meaning in reference to martial art. Gong fu, however, I tend to teach my students is more of a philosophy, right? Gong fu can translate into a skill that is developed through time and arduous effort. It can also be translated as hard work. Okay. There is no martial art called Kung Fu, but rather Kung Fu refers to the art. So for example, if you're studying Hangar Kung Fu, Choi Lei Fat Kung Fu, okay, or how should we say, if you study Hangar or Choi Lei Fat, those styles would fall into what we would know as Gong Fu. If you study Wing Chun, then Gong Fu, right?
Yeah.
Basically, and basically anything can be labeled as Gong Fu. So if you're a great chef and you take pride in your cooking and you've worked really hard to be an expert in your craft as a chef, then technically your skill in cooking is your personal Gong Fu. If you're great at soccer, that's your Gong Fu, right?
Yeah.
So anything that you've really taken a passion to enough to practice really hard and sacrifice a lot of things for your craft is Gong Fu. However, let me back up a little bit. Some people would say, oh, you don't have to sacrifice much, if as long as you're good at something. And I would venture to say, hold up. Yes, there is. There's always something that you sacrifice if you want to really get good at something. It doesn't matter if it's video games or
Yeah.
martial arts or, getting good at soccer or, getting good enough to in baseball to make it into the big leagues. There's always something, however small or however big, that someone sacrifices in order to spend time to get good at the craft. And that differs from each person. And there's always a little bit of type of suffering, quote unquote,
Yeah.
um, to gain that skill, and also a little bit of disappointment that we all have to go through to get good at anything that we want to get good at. So with that said, the difference between Kung Fu and uh, Wushu, so to speak, um, can be multi-layered. In this case that I just explained, it's a more of a terminology, lexicon kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? However, we can also look at it in terms of, the philosophy, um, like Kung Fu being any type of hard work, and Wushu uh, can be also referenced to just the modern style of Wushu. And even within the term itself of Wushu, there is confusion sometimes within how it's used, because if you say I do Wushu, many of the modern contemporary Wushu, sport Wushu, I should say,
Mm.
players will understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
However, the traditionalists, such as the people that studied traditional Hungar, Twilight, other traditional styles of Kung Fu, they know that their styles fall within the category of Wushu. So that's where the confusion lies.
Yeah.
I guess it's a matter of, before using the term Kung Fu or Wushu, I guess the thing would be to clarify in what capacity are we using
Yeah.
these terms, so that way there's no confusion as to the reference, depending on how it's being referenced to in conversation. So anyway, that's kind of some of the difference.
Yeah.
It goes around in circles because some people would say, oh, Kung Fu is Chinese. And if we talk in terms of a philosophical manner, it doesn't have to be Chinese.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like a Chinese anything. Kung
Yeah.
Fu can just mean something that that you spend time getting good at through arduous effort. It can be anything, So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good way to kind of word it. Yeah. You say it's a terminology. It's like they're skipping categories in Wushu, and that's in
Mhm.
Kung Fu. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we also have to take into consideration that Chinese does not have an exact literal English translation, because the Asian languages such as Japanese and Chinese are conceptual languages, not literal translate to English type thing. So I was trying to explain this to several of my beginner students, kind of the same question that you were asking: what's the difference between Wushu and Kung Fu, because the movements look so different. And I had to say, well, let's take the martial arts movement out of it
Yeah.
for a second, and let's just look at the header. Kung Fu, Wushu. Wushu means martial arts. Kung Fu means something that you get really good at, right? So I told them, consider like Kung Fu to almost be, the styles or the methods of what you do, right? Whereas, and they go under Wushu. Here's
Yeah.
martial art, right? But then I confused them a little bit more by saying, but you know what? In China, if you study Taekwondo or karate or judo or even Krav Maga or
Mm.
MMA or whatever, that still falls under wushu,
Yep.
right? So they're like, oh, okay. So if we look at wushu as being the file folder and
Yeah.
kung fu as being the files, I'm like, okay, that's one way you could look at it. But it does still kind of go deeper because of the fact that there is sport wushu. There's a completely different, subsection of it based on the sporting aspect, that does that high flying, jumping,
Yeah.
kicking, acrobatic taolu or the forms, and also the sansho, the sports sparring.
Yeah.
So and that falls within wushu as well, the sports style. So yeah, I guess it just kind of depends on the referencing of how you use the terms.
Mm. Yeah, I pretty much can understand because of course I trained in the Chuck Norris system. Of
Mhm,
course, in this case, if anybody asks what's my discipline, I say the Chuck Norris system. And I mean,
mhm,
either they understand or I have to like explain to them. It's like I say, it's basically tank sudo, taekwondo, and like Muay Thai. It's like all those
mhm,
styles put in this one. So I pretty much have to describe like what's a style. Well, all I can say, it's like I'm doing katas and doing
mhm.
everything else. I can't say I'm this style is like I'm fighting like Chuck Norris, but or should I say I have the power of Chuck Norris? Yeah,
I have the power.
yeah, yeah. You just put a sword, you put a sword in the air, and this lightning strikes,
Yeah.
and then you change it Chuck Norris. Shazam! But, oh, okay. Well, you say you also could, yeah, you competed and done all that. Well, what other style would you consider trying out?
Oh, my goodness. Well, does it have to be a completely different system than
Yeah, it's
than
like
whatever?
what's one style that kind of gets your attention? Like you say you want to try it, but you never had to. Like for me, I like to try capoeira, but
You
I know.
know, yeah, I when I was younger, I actually said, I'd like to try capoeira, and I actually went to a seminar, and I thought that was really cool, um, until I like injured my spine, and,
Oh,
and then I couldn't do much of anything after that, for capoeira. But over the last just within the last 20 years, I've been wanting to try out different different other styles of Filipino martial arts. Like I've wanted to try Sayok Kali, I wanted to try Pikitirsha Kali. Now I do Doce Pares Eskrima and a hybrid style of Doce Pares, and Kali and Eskrima under another instructor, Chris Petrilli. Um, but I've always wanted to try, just get a feel for Pikiti Tirsha, maybe even Sayok Kali. Um, and I've always wanted to try Kendo,
and, oh,
and here's the funny part. I studied Iaido, and I studied what's called the Zen Nippon Kendo Renmei Kata, which is the type of Iaido that Kendo people do.
mm,
So I studied Iaido with a gentleman that did Kendo, and he led a practice group and taught us the what we call the Zen Kenren um, series. And I fell in love with Iaido. It's just that my teaching schedule and my work schedule didn't make it possible for me to attend Kendo classes. But that was something that I've always wanted to try, to kind of challenge my cardio and to challenge my strategic thinking. Um, and I just haven't been able to do it. Although I guess I've got the Iaido side of it
yeah,
already. So, you know, so, but yeah, I if there's an art that I would want to try and get into, it would be Kendo.
yeah. I think I've seen that like a couple times. I mean, I don't know if I seen it exactly, but I remember visiting my niece's karate school back in Canada. I mean, this was like back in 2017. She was like 10 years old, and I kind of want to surprise her to actually see her take class. And yeah, it's like I'm just looking at she was taking Kempo. And of course, she
Mhm.
was amazing. It's like you got all these kids in class. And then, of course, I'm seeing my niece looking so good. It's like I'm just a proud uncle. It's like here I am,
Mhm.
a black belt, and I see my niece actually almost following the same footsteps as me. But of
Mm,
course, she
mhm.
didn't. Of course, she didn't stay to become a black belt. I'm not that disappointed, but it's just good to see that she's almost doing the same thing I am. Kind of like
Mhm.
I'm pretty much her favorite uncle.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. Uh, all right, so we pretty much are at our hitting dojo segment of the interview. So this is like a series of questions. You're gonna have fun with this one,
Okay.
right? Because yeah, all right. So I got like 7 questions, and maybe you can answer them in the best of your ability.
Okay.
So okay, the first question is the best advice you ever gotten, and who said it?
The best advice. Okay. So it wasn't really advice, but it was, if you really think about it, my wushu instructor, um, when her training was really, how should we say, I don't want to use the term brutal, but it was brutal. Um, and I was in the corner of the tennis court that we were practicing in, leaning on my spear and puking in the corner
Ooh,
because of the effort, right?
yeah,
And she like went over to me and she whispered, you know, uh, do you want to become a champion? And I said, yes, Sifu. Do you trust me? Yes, Sifu. Okay, then trust me. Just do what I say. I promise I won't kill you. And I said, okay. And, you know, from there, I went on to become a 3-time national champion and a 2-time world wushu champion. So
okay,
it's kind of like, you know, a lot of times when you're going through that, that puking stage, so to speak,
yeah,
you know, it becomes really easy to give up. And sometimes you have to take your trust outside of the realm that you're used to. If you're used to relying on yourself, um, it's going to be kind of hard to dig down deep when you're almost at that point of wanting to give up and say, screw it, I don't need this anymore. I didn't pay for this, right?
yeah,
Sometimes though, you do have to, take that faith and that trust and put it outside of you. And that's the lesson that it taught me, and not so many words. Do you want to become a champion? Yes, Sifu. Do you trust me? Yes, Sifu. Then do what I say. Yes,
yeah,
Sifu. And it wasn't, and she wasn't talking to me in a way that was correcting me for not doing what she said. She was saying, don't give up. Because I was at that, puking in the
yeah,
corner, type of thing. And not being able to move my legs, and she's pushing and pushing. And I get now why she was pushing. She wanted us to get past that easy peasy stage, and to be able to be physically ready to compete against some of the world's best when it came to wushu. And that was the way to do it at that time. And I did come really close to quitting until I learned that lesson. Sometimes you have to just place faith in something outside of you to be able to keep going. And
yeah.
it worked.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense, especially when I'm thinking about my fourth degree tests. I mean, since that was the last physical test, I got 2 other people that were testing with me. They were going for a third, but I was going for like my last physical test. So I should say I got the worst of it. You know,
Mhm.
other than dealing with the requirements of the test, I had like the the testing board was just putting add-ons in there to see how much I can take. And I was like almost out of it. And it's like, do I need to quit, or do I want to get the master rank? So that was my goal, to get the
Mhm.
master rank. So if I get past fourth degree, I can retire. I don't have to test physically. I mean, all I gotta do is just go to Vegas and perform and just get my black jacket, and then that's
Mhm.
that's it. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome.
All right. The worst advice you ever gotten?
Hmm. Hmm. The
Yeah.
worst advice. I'm thinking.
Yeah, I used to get people with this one.
Um, gosh, I can't think of anything that was considered the worst advice, but because I don't, that's I can't think of anything, to tell you the truth.
Yeah,
The
I mean,
worst advice, because let's see here, because I when it came to like people giving me advice, there were only really maybe 4 people, and I don't recall at all anybody giving me advice that actually resulted in something that like harmed me or harmed my reputation, or had a negative impact. So I'm gonna have to take a pass on that one.
yeah. So yeah, use this question loses because yeah, if you don't have a worse advice, then that means you are at that good path. So that's wonderful that you had the best piece of advice and not the
I'm
worst.
hoping.
Yeah. Uh, all right. Next question. How do you reward yourself? I mean, you accomplished so much, and then of course you say you have to kind of step aside and reward yourself. Like usually I call this the guilty pleasure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as guilty uh pleasure that it doesn't sound like, uh my guilty pleasure is my Friday afternoons and my Sunday evenings.
Yeah.
And and because those are the times where I don't teach at all. you know I mean, sure, I've got my show and stuff like that, but my Sundays are where I can sleep in, I can do whatever. If I wanted to have a beer at 10 in the morning, I could. You know what I mean? It's a that's my uh guilty pleasure, so to speak, is to just enjoy that day off. That's my reward,
Yeah.
because I have a day job. I'm a PE teacher at a private school during the day, and then I teach martial arts at night 6 days a week. And it's no, I should say 5 days a week, because I don't teach very much on Friday afternoons. But on those days where I can have Friday afternoons off after work, and a whole Sunday off, that's how I reward myself. If I can manage it so my assistants can take over for a week and I go off and have a vacation, that's my reward. Now,
Yeah.
here's the most important reward for me, and I know that martial arts instructors out there know exactly what I'm talking about, is when you finally see that look of understanding in their eyes when they finally understand a technique,
Oh yeah.
right? And that new sense of confidence that you can see in their eyes and in their movement when they finally go, aha, I get this. That's my reward. I tell people that this is why I teach kids. When they get something and they understand something and they really start to grasp it, and you see the aha moment in their eyes, that is my reward.
Yeah.
So lots of rewards there. So
Yeah. A lot of awards to be a millionaire, pretty much.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. So, if you were in a movie, what type of movie would you want to be in? Like action, romance, or even Disney movies?
I I wouldn't mind being in a Disney movie.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind being in a martial arts comedy or even a martial arts farce
Yeah.
movie, right? Because I had done a little bit of stunt work in independent movies.
Yeah.
I played get this, I played an Icelandic ninja, and that's the whole martial arts farce behind it, because ninjas don't come from Iceland, right? And ninjas don't speak in Norse or Swedish or anything like that. I don't remember what language we had to learn to speak for that particular role, but it was
Yeah.
it was meant to be campy and funny and hilarious, and I I enjoyed it. Um, and but yeah, I'm not too much into the serious, like, martial art cop type of
Yeah.
thing, where I kind of like the comedic, you know farce type of outlook to it. So I wouldn't mind being a character in one of those kinds of movies.
Yeah. I definitely sell for a Disney movie. I mean,
Yeah, or a
I'll
Disney movie.
yeah, I'll go for Lion King if I wanted to.
Oh, there you
Yeah.
go. If
Yeah.
it involves singing, then okay, I might consider it.
Yeah. I can easily fool people with James Earl Jones.
Oh, you have a James Earl Jones voice. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. I can easily fool people. Yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
uh,
Cool.
Simba, everything the light touches is our kingdom.
That's pretty good. That's awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, I probably like to be one of those movies. Actually, I was in a local movie that we was doing here in Buffalo. And it's like
Uh-huh.
it was like a wrestling based type of movie, yeah, because I do pro wrestling, and yeah, and
Nice.
yeah, we was like doing this. I did like a couple segments, and of course,
Mhm.
about around this time, I had like braids in my hair, like I had longer hair. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I mean, I try to comb it as not much, but it ended up turning to braids.
Oh.
But nevertheless, that was like a fun experience. I mean, at least that gave me some
Nice.
fame. So
Nice.
yeah. Uh, all right, secret talent.
Secret talent? Uh, I don't know. I can hit a dime at 25 feet with a blowgun.
Oh, that's a talent. I mean,
No. Um, yeah. Um, I am I like singing karaoke.
yep. I mean,
Yep. So, so I guess that's that's a secret talent, because a lot of people know me for, like, oh, hey, Rusty can throw knives, Rusty can crack a whip, but like a blowgun, you know.
yeah.
can, can I stand at one end of my house and hit a quarter on the other end of my house? Probably.
Yeah. I mean, if you could at least flip a coin and make it to the music machine, that'd be good. Be like that Michael
Yeah.
Jackson.
Yeah, right. I do want to work on a trick blowgun shot where somebody throws up a playing card and then I try to shoot it. I don't know. That can get kind of dangerous. So
Yeah. All right.
Anyway,
Dream celebrity encounter.
dream celebrity encounter. I'd love to meet Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
Not only because of his celebrity status, but because, he is down to earth. He's genuinely funny, and he's genuinely caring for things that he's passionate about.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to meet him.
Yeah. That'd probably be on my bucket list. Actually, like go down the street one day and I actually run into Jackie Chan. I mean, that'd be a dream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had a lot of my celebrity encounters, of course. I mean,
Nice.
of course, the cast of Cobra Kai, that's like the dream. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
of course. This is probably my 10th time watching season 4 of Cobra Kai now, because
Oh,
really that gets to
I
me.
haven't tried. I haven't seen any part of it yet. I need to get on the ball. I need to just get on the ball and watch it.
Oh yeah, you'll be surprised. If you watch it, it'd be like almost you want to go back to compete again. Pretty
Oh,
much, yeah,
nice.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. All right. So last question. Of course, you're very known to doing this because I watch your show a lot with the Java Buzz. You have inspiring quotes. So can you think of any inspiring quotes that describe your journey?
My favorite is actually by Confucius. It's among any three people walking, there must be my teacher. So to me, I interpret that quote as saying that you can learn from anybody, among any three people, anywhere, walking down the street. One of them, or maybe all of them, can teach me something. Um, and yeah, you can learn from anyone. And this is it's a lesson that I like to teach my own PE students, because, you know, when, when you're a kid, sometimes we don't make the best choices. And when it comes to picking teams, you'll always pick the strongest people first, and you'll pick the weakest people last.
Yeah.
And that's something that kids naturally do, because they notice who is stronger, who is better, who is more skilled, and who is weaker, not as strong. However, um, you can always learn something from the people who you think are not as strong. Maybe they're great strategists. They don't necessarily have to be the strongest, but maybe they
Yep.
can tell your team, hey, let's think of it this way. And that's, maybe we can win the game that way, right? Or maybe, they may be strong, but they might not be the greatest in, like, figuring out, a rotation order for the teams, because you don't want to send all the strong people out.
Yeah.
When they all get tired, then what? Now you have to send all the weak people out, right?
Mhm.
Quote unquote, quoting when I say strong and weak.
Yeah.
So you need everybody on a team. Each person on a team can contribute something, assuming that those people want to play. So it's just a matter of knowing that anyone can be your teacher. Don't let don't judge a book by its cover, and don't let outward appearances make you take a snap judgment as to somebody's skill or ability to do anything.
Yep. And I was thinking about that one quote. I was watching your show Friday. It was I could really remember it. Be forgiving, be understanding, but don't be a fool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, it's like thinking about it's like you got those people that like from your past that pretty much did you wrong. And
Mhm.
you're just thinking about it. Like I kind of have that flashback. I think about this one instructor that he wasn't my instructor, but he was like sort of we kind of call him practice class instructors. And
Mhm.
he's like almost like that militant type of instructor. I like to
Mhm.
say a real jerk.
Oh,
'Cause, yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it was like I just think about like how devious he was, and of course I remember one time he was going over throws, and we was like working on carpet, but before we got like actually padded floors, we just worked on carpet. We was going
Mhm.
over a toss, and I guess my partner was throwing me improperly, and I hit my head on the ground.
Oh.
And then from there, it was like I was holding my head, and then that instructor just told me to leave the class because he thought I was
Mm.
interrupting. And that just got me angry. I just keep thinking about it. And
Mhm.
then that's right now. Yeah, and right now I'm teaching his son, which is kind of like almost, I don't know, how would you say it? It's like I'm teaching his son, like it's kind of like almost a scary thought or a scary flashback. But
Mm.
I want to at least show his son that I'm not as devious as his father was, and also
Mhm.
I'm trying to show his father, yeah, but I'm not saying that he was that terrible. He kind of teach me how to be tough. I
Mhm.
mean, I was that kind of shy kid that I didn't get myself out there, but
Mhm.
sometimes you have to have that tough love. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
but it's it's kind of, you gotta have to be forgiven, no matter how devious that person was.
Yeah.
So yeah, think of that quote.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good. Yeah.
yeah,
And as we said then, it's during that show, it's when you forgive someone, it's not that you condone the behavior that that was that wronged you or humiliated you or hurt you. The forgiveness is so that way you can move on,
yeah,
so that way you can just let it go and say, okay, whatever, and move on, and not get stuck in that you know that rut. To
yeah,
And because like we said on the show last Friday, too many people choose to stay in the rut that they're in, because it's so much easier to hold on to what hurt you. It's so much easier to hold on to an excuse to hate someone rather than just letting it go. I Several years ago, I read a very touching story that blew my mind. a woman in the courtroom forgave the man that killed her son. Came up to him, well, said something on the podium, and said, it's not my place to judge you. I don't know what was going on through your head. I don't know what your reasoning was to kill my child, but I forgive you. And the defendant was like literally crying. And what blew people's minds was this woman, who obviously was a very devout religious woman, hugged this young man and said, you'll be okay. Take the right path. You'll be okay. I forgive you. And I was like, in my head, I'm thinking, if someone killed my son, I don't know how I would be able to do that. Right. Because we're, invested in that emotion of, you took away somebody from me. Right. So the strength of this woman's forgiveness was something that really inspired me. She didn't condone the fact that her son was killed by this guy, but she forgave him so she could move on.
Yeah.
For her life. And that takes so much strength. I can see why sometimes people will stay in the rut they're in, because it takes an awful lot of strength and inner fortitude to make that call to forgive. So anyway.
Yeah, I think I put up like a comment says forgiveness is divine. So yeah,
it is.
Yeah, and I think I seen something like a video of that story you were talking about. I think, yeah, I'm not sure if it's the same one, but I think it was like you were talking about it, and yeah, she forgave the defendant that killed her son, and I think she hugged him. Yeah, so I remember that.
Yeah, it there's a video of it somewhere.
Yeah.
That I posted on Facebook, and it was several years ago that I posted it, and it's a very powerful video, because if you were the defendant, well, what do you say to that? You killed somebody's child, and that mother is forgiving you and is willing to embrace you. And if that doesn't change somebody, then I don't know what would. What I mean? So yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining me on this on Kickpod. So is there any last minute words would you like to say to our listeners out there?
Well, thank you, TJ, for having me on the Kickpod podcast. It's an honor to be a part of your podcast. Yep. I just want to send a shout out to anyone out there that's listening. Thank you for listening. Please spread the word about TJ's podcast, the Kickpod. And when you get a chance, come check us out on Dynamic Dojo Talk TV, Sundays at 6 p.m. Pacific time, and the Java Buzz morning show Fridays at 6 a.m. Pacific time. And of course, TJ Williams podcast that airs whenever he posts it.
Yes.
I guess. So.
Well, definitely. Hopefully, I get Jane on this show. Definitely, I want to definitely have a good discussion with her. Or
it'll be fun if you get her on. It'll be fun. If you get Andrea on, Andrea was already part of your. Yep. If you talk with Kathy, it will be a very, it will be a very inspiring talk with Kathy Long.
Oh yeah.
So, because she's been through a lot.
So yeah. All right, so yeah, thank you very much for taking the time to actually talk. So I'm gonna do my little closing. Of course, I had the DeLorean, and so we're gonna close the door. I'm gonna lock it. Yeah. All right. So for those who just tuned into my podcast, make sure you tune into my previous episodes on the BICBPRadio.com, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And I'll see you next time for another session here at the Kickpod Dojo. This is your host, TJ Williams, bowing you out.